A towering ancient figure, a legendary sage, and a source of inspiration. As part of the enduring Chinese civilization. More than 2,500 years after Confucius was born, they accept my invitation to go back in history, discuss his ideas, and why he is particularly relevant today. Discovering Confucius.
Hello and welcome to our special program, Discovering Confucius. I'm Tian Wei. I'm standing here in the Confucius Temple in Qufu, the birthplace of Confucius. The memorial ceremony for Confucius' 2,573rd birthday was just held here. The event paid tribute to the most legendary philosopher and educator in China's history, and is the biggest and grandest event in China to commemorate him for over 2,000 years. I had the honor to participate in the ceremony together with a few hundred others from all over the world. And now they are telling everyone to make sure they look tidy and also look with solemnity. And you can see on the lining up the dancers that are going to be there for the ceremony. Confucius was a strong advocate for ritual. He believed that participation in ritual served to unite people and strengthen the human community. The rituals at the memorial ceremony comprised of 6 parts: welcoming the spirit, the first worship, the second worship, and the final worship, delivering the spirit, and watching the burning. These rituals symbolize people reuniting with their ancestors, welcoming their spirits, communicating with them, and then sending them back to heaven. After the official ceremony, the descendants of Confucius also held their family rituals in the same temple. It's believed that there are a few million around the world that are members of the extended Confucius family today. I talked to one of them, Kong Xinfeng, a 76th generation of descendant of Confucius. Who we are is a gift of those who came before us. The legacies of our ancestors determine the richness of our language, the beauty of the arts, and the great wisdom of our philosophy. This is especially true for modern-day descendants of the legendary Chinese thinker Confucius. One of them is Kong Xinfeng, a 76th generation kin of Confucius, who talks about the heritage of the master. He's also a political scientist, a debater, and a researcher on how we can be enriched by Confucius and Confucianism today. Professor Kong, what a pleasure to see you.
It's my great pleasure to be interviewed by Ms. Tian.
What is it like to be a member of the Kong family, to be the descendant of Confucius?
I'm so honored that I'm one of the direct descendants of Confucius and one of the 76th generation descendants of Confucius.
Oh, have you met the people of your same generation?
Yes, I met quite a lot of people with the same generation, Lin, all around the world. And I guess maybe there are tens of thousands of my same generation lineal descendants of Confucius.
So how did you know that you are the direct descendant of the Confucius family?
Because we have Guinness World Record. We have the longest family tree or genealogy of Kong family, and I found my the name of my grandpa, in the family tree, and I told this to my father, and my father got so excited that he honored me and gave me a great hug.
It must be a very exciting moment, isn't it?
Yeah, very exciting. That is, I remember it's in about 14 years ago.
Wow.
14 years ago, yeah.
Not many, as descendant of Confucius, have chosen the road that you took, which is not only being the member of the 76th generation of Confucius descendant, but also doing research about Confucius as a philosopher, and also as one who is having tremendous cultural impact on China. So tell me more about what is it like to have this combination?
I'm not a philosopher or a future potential philosopher. I'm trying my best to be a political theorist. Being born as a descendant of Confucius is not something I can choose, although I'm very proud of it. However, I decide to devote my whole life to studying Confucius and Confucianism. It is indeed my own choice. I once studied at Peking University for 11 years, and then I taught, senior officers, senior civil servants in Chinese Academy of Governance. And then I spent 5 years teaching political theory at Shandong University. And during all these years, I found that we Chinese people today, we have many puzzles, and all these puzzles are surrounded with a cultural identity. We faced many difficulties involving the question just like who are we, where did we come from, and where should we go. It has become the question of existence, and I decided to try to trace back to my ancestor, to Confucianism, to try to understand and try to solve all these problems.
So how?
How? I think we should try to understand what is culture, what is the final output or product of culture. And I think for Confucius, he told us the final result or final product of a certain culture is nothing but collective personality. And for Confucius, the collective personality of we Chinese people are gentlemanship, or 君子. And I will try my best to understand what is 君子, and I will try my best to teach my students and try to work with them to become 君子. And I think this is very holy. It is very holy for not only for scholar but also for a descendant of Confucius.
With my humble understanding about Confucius and also Confucianism, 君子 is not just about one person, an individual, but rather how this person is functioning with other human beings, other parts of the society, and also even the nature in a way. So it is a very complex and yet holistic approach to how a being has been evolving and becoming. That is a very deep in a way, demand, shall I say, for any 君子. So how far are you from there?
I am now 42 years old, and Confucius told us his lifespan. He told us when a person enters the age of 40, he should not be confused. But I have yet I have so many confusions that I think I have a long way to go.
You questioned, in fact, Professor Kong, about the concept of a clash of civilizations. You said earlier in your academic paper that you do not believe this is the rule of the world, quote unquote. So how do you see theory like this? What is your approach and way of understanding how the world works?
I really appreciate your patience to read my somewhat boring paper on 天下. But I think the so-called clash of civilizations thesis, first put forward by Professor Samuel Huntington, is very forward-looking and very realistic and enlightening. However, the clash of civilization theory has a strong Western-centric feature, which urgently needs to be corrected by Oriental, world insight, including Confucianism. And this includes the Confucian ideal of all under heaven, or 天下.
Can you explain?
Yes, I think it is of a great realistic importance for modern thinkers all around the world to return to the classical world of the axial age or even pre-axial age, and to revisit the wisdom of the ancient philosophers, including Confucius, on the governance of the world, reflecting on the great spiritual creation of the ancient sages thousands of years ago, and the possibility of genocide and extermination existing in the so-called civilized world today, as you observed in Afghanistan and Iraq, maybe. And we can't help but feel ashamed. Can't the spiritual creation of the Asian people continue to serve as a source of political wisdom or insights that has been almost exhausted today? For example, 天下 ideal for Confucianism, it has its origin in the political history of a Zhou dynasty. And for the Zhou dynasty, they tried their effort to allow the survival of the Yin house and other former lords of 天下 descendants. And in China, we called it 存亡续绝. And in the Analects of Confucius, he discussed these political ideas thoroughly. As a winner of the war puts an end to the other regime, but does not eliminate the underdog's bloodline, and the loser of the war loses merely his political power, but could retain his offspring. And this initiative could be seen as an moderate separation between the political military concept of a state on the one side, and the culture religious concept of the nation on the other. So, it's a very advanced political humanitarianism. And, in addition, it is also constituted an important source of secular rationalism in ancient China, and thus lays the foundation of the highly inclusive and cohesive Chinese civilization and the widely accepted consensus for the 天下 ideal.
Now, the 天下 is a very Chinese word. There is hardly any direct translation in English language of this concept. So here comes the very tricky part, that when we try to put an idea in one culture into language of another culture so that the other culture could understand the culture that we talked about, it is very hard to transcend the real essence of meanings, but rather superficial translations. And yet, the translations brings convenience for us to understand things. So how do you see, with the example of the concept of 天下, what exactly is 天下?
Confucius does not speak English. And one of the great difficulties we face in the dialogue between Eastern and Western civilizations or scholars is precisely the intangibility and the misunderstandings on the key concepts or terms such as 天下, as you mentioned. And another difficulty is that Confucius does not speak modern Mandarin or modern Chinese. So scholars who are within a certain civilization may not necessarily understand some of the major concepts or key terms in their classical period. Just as Mr. Chen Yingque remarked, according to the standards of exegesis today, the interpretation of a single concept or term means writing a monograph of culture history. So this is very, very difficult. This requires the academic community to make a painstaking effort to understand its own civilization and paraphrase it in modern language. And at the same time, we should strive to understand other civilizations and use a form of language that can be used to carry out modern transformation and cross-civilization communication, such as the 天下 term. And I think it definitely is that is differs from the notion of the so-called international system, because 天下 denies the notion of a nation, and 天下 is not a cosmopolitan order. 天下 has a very, very strong sense of morality.
Before we go, I would love to know, we have this Nishan Forum going on every year to mark the birthday of Confucius. This is already 2573rd anniversary since the birth of Confucius. But what is the relevancy of Confucius and Confucianism today? That is a big debate going on, we see in the meeting halls and among the experts and scholars. What is your take as the 76th generation of Confucius family?
I'd like to say happy birthday, my dearest ancestor, and happy birthday, the everlasting or eternal teacher for Chinese people. And for your question, how do I see the relevance of studying Confucius and Confucianism today? I think historically Confucianism has successfully guaranteed the formation and development of Chinese civilization for thousands of years without interruption, and it successfully guaranteed the formation and the maintenance of a political situation of unity in China. And it successfully guaranteed the formation and consolidation of a multi-ethnic and integrated big family in China. And finally, it successfully guaranteed the social development and progress as a balance of social interests and social relations. In addition, China's excellent traditional culture, including Confucianism, also contains important enlightenment to solve many contemporary human dilemmas. Therefore, we should try our best to be faithful inheritor and promoter of China's excellent traditional culture. Only by this effectively introducing Confucian and Confucianism into the discussion of what is China and of the making and becoming of China, can we obtain a more holistic sense of subjectivity and then enhance the native or made in China creative ability of disciplines, of scholarships, and of discourses systems of Chinese philosophy and the social sciences for the new era.
If you were one of the disciples of Confucius and he would answer your questions, what would be the question you want to ask him?
I cannot imagine such a golden opportunity will appear to me. I'm not that lucky as Confucius, who can from time to time dreamed of Duke of Zhou or his culture ancestor or culture idol. So if I had this opportunity, I think the question that I'd like to raise to Confucius, my ancestor, is will tomorrow be better?